Hey guys, welcome back. This is Ari in the Air. Thanks for being here. Today we're talking about something super exciting that even the pros screw up. How to do a rollover out of a hot air balloon with your paraglider. It's super advanced, it's super interesting, it's crazy fun. So today I'll take you outside, I'll show you how to set up your glider exactly how you want it to be able to do a safe rollover, and we'll break down the exact technique for exiting the balloon and opening the glider so that you can nail this on your first try. Subscribe to the channel. Let's get to it.
Okay, we're going to go over both how to set up your glider to do a rollover and how to do the rollover exactly. But before that, let me just say that paragliding is inherently dangerous, especially if you're launching your paraglider from a freaking hot air balloon. This is incredibly dangerous stuff. I take no responsibility for you totally blowing it and hurting yourself. So don't do a rollover unless you're going to do it. And if you're going to do it, you should do it right. I'll tell you how to do that right now. Okay. A person who's qualified to do a rollover probably has in excess of 200 stalls, dynamic full stalls, a lot of deep stall practice, helicopters, that kind of thing. And is also someone who has air awareness, who can do flips on their skis or on a trampoline, that kind of thing, because a big part of the rollover is actually going to be the jump, okay? First, I'll show you how to set up your glider, show you how to put on a tailgate, which is really important, and why you do that, and then we'll talk about how to do the jump.
Okay, so before you get in the balloon, you want to be totally hooked in to your harness and connected properly to your glider, which is obvious, but also worth noting. This is an Acro harness. This is a Sup Air Acro 3. Has 2 reserves, which is pretty recommended if you're going to do something like this. Next, make sure that my risers are connected properly. It's kind of rainy out here today and the grass is wet, so I'm not using my nice Acro glider. This is the old rag. This is the original Arctic, which is a pretty sporty unit for its time. I would also connect the speed bar just so that your connectors aren't hanging loose, and yeah, making sure that the lines are clear of any knots, any tangles, any debris, any sticks, anything like that is really important. Also, how you get your glider from the ground into the balloon is also important and will depend on who your hot air balloon pilot is and how he wants you to do that. Some balloon pilots will make you take the glider inside of the basket. Other balloon pilots will have you hold it as a rosette outside of the balloon, outside of the basket. Either way will work. The next thing, if you're going to do this, is when you rosette the glider, I've heard a couple of different ways. The way that I like to do it is to just take your whole riser set, and as you rosette, your first loop is small, your next loop is a little bit bigger, your next loop is bigger still, right? Your next loop is even bigger, your next loop is even bigger, and then I like to take what I call Rosette 2.0, where I grab the A lines all through the glider, just the A's here. I like to cinch them up one more time so that when I stuff it into the basket or anything, the leading edge is up, ready to go. So what you're trying to avoid here is that if you were to drop the glider out of the basket, that the lines wouldn't become a knot as they drop. So when you are going to do that, you are just going to take the glider and literally just drop it all at once. Let them go into free fall, and they will usually come out clean. Other ways that I've heard of doing it, but I decided against, was doing it like this. You see? Coiling it back and forth almost like a climbing rope instead, right? Which you could do that as well. Okay? Whatever you do, you don't want to make perfectly concentric circles, because that is what creates
the opportunity for it to create a loop that other lines can go through and cinch when you drop it. But like I said, when you get to altitude and you're ready to drop out of the balloon, you just drop the thing all at once and let it fall down, okay? At that point, you want to be really careful that you're like not going to fall onto your glider, because obviously if you're standing over your glider, it's at line stretch and you have no momentum above it. If you fall onto your glider at that point, that's pretty much the worst case scenario in paragliding. So once your glider's below you, like, you have to be extremely cautious to not slip and fall out of the basket and hit the glider. Most baskets that you'll jump out of do not have a door. The one that I have jumped out of has a door, which makes it really easy and really nice. But when you're climbing up the railing of the basket to jump off, that's when you got to be super, super cautious to not slip and fall onto your freaking glider, because that could totally kill you, right? Before you jump, it's a really good idea to do a pre-flight check because you're about to fly. The next thing we're going to talk about is the tailgate. This is one of the most important parts of setting up your glider for the jump. So a tailgate is a rubber band or a hair tie or masking tape or whatever you use to hold the tail of the glider, the wingtips, back so that you never have a line over, and so that the glider, when you jump over it, it has its perfect rosette shape. You'll see here, when you look at this piece of video, my first jump, I didn't have a tailgate. When you drop the glider down, you have absolutely no control of it, and the balloon sometimes is rising, so it pulls air into the cells and it makes it want to inflate. And sometimes you're descending, and so it, you know, the glider is falling and it makes it want to do this big horseshoe shape. It's just impossible to control it. So, and when I jump over the glider, the leading edge is being covered up by one of the wingtips. Luckily, as I load the glider, the wingtip blew out with lots of pressure, super easy, super fast, right? It didn't cause a problem, but it can cause a problem. And to control it before you get in the balloon, you put on what's called a tailgate. A tailgate's from base jumping. It keeps the glider from opening with the wingtips first and getting a line over. Okay, so how you do a tailgate. You got to make sure that the wingtips are behind the lines, okay? It's easiest done in a rosette, okay? So here I have one wingtip and I have the other wingtip, right? And I know that they're behind the lines because here are all the lines and here are the wingtips. What you want is a tailgate that is on the wingtips themselves, okay? So for me, what I do is I take either a hair tie or a rubber band. I take the tails, these are the tails of the wingtips, and I'll just take a couple inches of them, and I'll take this rubber band that I have here, and I'll just do a little double wrap with the rubber band. You don't want it so tight that the pressure of the glider when it inflates won't blow the thing off, and you don't want it so loose that when you drop the glider to line stretch that it could pop off, because then you've defeated the purpose again. So I've got a couple inches through it. This rubber band was from organic broccoli, which is highly recommended that you eat your vegetables before you do some kind of stupid stunt like this. But this tailgate, I can't express the importance of this enough. This makes the jump so much more mellow and so much easier on your mind when you look down at the glider and it's just a perfect rosette. You just see the leading edge is perfect. You know that as you jump over it, it's just going to come out super clean. There's no chance of a line over. There's no chance of a cravat. It's just, this makes the jump so easy and nice. You have to have a tailgate. Even if you're going to do a tard, like a totally awesome rapid deployment where you take the glider rosetted, you jump out and you throw the glider up, you still want a tailgate. So this is for rollovers, this is for tards. The D-bags, you pack it into a way that kind of like does a similar effect, that you make sure that the wingtips are behind the lines. But yes, a tailgate is the most important part of setting up your glider, okay? Okay, so now you've got your rosette, you've got your tailgate, you're in the balloon, you're up at altitude. The balloon pilot says he's ready for you to jump out of the balloon. You say, okay, you can climb up on the railing of the basket or open the door of the basket if you're lucky enough to be jumping from a balloon with a door. And then
take your glider and just drop it. Just drop it all at once. Even if you're in like a reverse twist, it's okay. When the glider comes out to line stretch, it will untwist and you'll be standing like this and your risers will be hanging. Your lines will be going straight down to your glider. Since you have the tailgate on there, you'll see the perfect leading edge all the way around. You'll see the wingtips being held together. You'll see all the lines coming out from the middle. You'll know the glider is totally perfect and clean. At that point, I like to do a pre-flight check. Just make sure that I'm ready to go and I'm strapped in and my reserve handles are still connected and haven't gotten bumped by one of the other passengers in the basket as we ascend. At this point, you're about ready to do the most important part, okay? How I like to hold my brakes, I don't usually do acro with my hands through my brakes like this, but this is how I do the rollovers. Take my brakes like this, I hold the risers, okay? Just like this. When you jump, you're gonna wanna just keep the risers away from you. But how you jump is the most important part of the whole thing. A lot of acro pilots make the mistake of doing some kind of flip when they jump over the glider. And the reality is that you're not doing a flip, you're doing a dive. So, a couple of things. One, when you're standing there and you're ready to go, take a couple deep breaths, get yourself a nice 3, 2, 1, and keep your eyes on the horizon, okay? If you stare at your glider and jump out of the balloon forward, you're gonna do a flip and you're gonna over-rotate. If you over-rotate, then the risers come to here, you can't see the glider as it opens, and you get kind of rocked, all right? It's also just not as smooth and it's not as much style. So if you want the style and you want it to open smooth and you want to watch it open perfectly, then you have to understand that you're not actually trying to jump and do a flip and land on your back. You're not trying to do a flip and land on your feet. You're actually just trying to do a belly down dive where just before the glider pulls tight, you're actually head down. You're gonna wanna get a nice push horizontally and get out and over the glider. And as you do that, start with your eyes on the horizon and you dive towards the horizon. And as you go into free fall and you start feeling yourself being pulled down, that's when you switch your gaze to the glider. What that does is as you move your eyes, then your body position just changes a little bit and you start to continue that forward rotation. You're better off landing almost like belly down or slightly head down than you are totally over rotating, landing feet first. When I say landing, I mean like where you are in body position when the line stretch hits, right? When the lines get tight. When the lines get tight, you want to be head down because what's going to happen is the glider is going to start pulling on you and now the glider is going to finish the rotation for you, right? If you over rotate, the glider is going to snap you back and then you're going to go forward and it's just super rough. You don't want to do that. So eyes on the horizon, 3, 2, 1, jump towards the horizon, dive, diving, diving. Now I'm looking towards the glider and I rotate forward and the glider pulls tight. When the glider pulls tight, I don't do anything. I don't do anything. A lot of people, when they conceptualize a rollover, they think that they need to pull the brakes to keep the glider from shooting because imagine here's your glider and you jump over it and now you're in some kind of infinity position to make the glider surge really far forward. But that's not actually how it works. How it works is you jump over the glider and no matter how hard you push, you can't get it to line stretch horizontally. So you fall next to the glider, so the lines are slack, lines are slack, lines are slack, lines are slack. When you start pulling down on the glider, when the lines finally get tight, you are below the glider and it's still in a little rosette. So it's not flying, it doesn't have power to shoot. As the air starts filling the cells, it's going to build pressure inside, which will pop the tailgate, and essentially you're going to fall into a deep stall and then it will fly. If you just keep your hands up, your glider will fly. If you pull on the brakes when you earlier than you should, as the glider opens up, it's not flying, it's in deep stall, and if you're on the brakes at all, it will go into a tail slide or into a spin if you're asymmetric on that. So really, you just want to let the glider do its thing. It's not going to shoot hard, especially if you're familiar with all kinds of stalls and that kind of stuff. It will not shoot hard. Let it fly. If it shoots in front of you, then you can check it, but let it do its thing to begin with, right? It's really not that hard. It's super scary the first time you do it, but it's not that technical. The key points are: use a tailgate and make sure your rigging is sound and your glider is ready to go, your harness is all set up. That's like foundational. When you're ready to jump, look at the horizon, have a nice dive out. Remember, you're only trying to go head down. You're not trying to do a flip. You're not trying to land on your back. Look at the horizon when you jump, and only once you really go into free fall, that's when you want to change your gaze down to the glider. And then when you get to line stretch, let the glider do its thing first, let it open up, and when it starts flying, then you can add the brake inputs, but you really don't need to do much. The glider will just fly on its own. After the glider's flying, then you get to have so much fun. You get to do an acro run to the ground. I hope this helps you. Be super careful doing this. It's not my fault if you screw it up and blow it, but if you totally nail it, I'd love to see the video, so send it to me. Also, this is not my Blackout Plus. This is not the glider I'd recommend doing it. I would recommend using the Blackout Plus from U-Turn. I fly a 21 meter. If you'd like a Blackout Plus, I have them here. I can sell them to you for $3,000 US plus shipping, which is pretty damn good. If you're interested, email me at airyintheair@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.